pretty nice when they figured it out. But welcome, everybody. Here we are at the finals of the World Magic Cup qualifier in Chicago, Illinois. In the left, we have Brandon Nelson with Naya Agro. And on the right, we have Dan Cecchetti with his Bent Auras deck. In the booth right now is myself, Ray Punzlan, along with Rashad Miller.
Hi.
We are.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you with my weird highs. Okay, so both of these players are staring at their hand. Okay, now they're playing. I was going to give you a little bit of commentary about how they've considered the cards in their hands, but I guess I don't have to do that anymore.
Off to the races, Everson Pilgrim for Brandon Nelson. So we've seen, for the short amount of rounds we've showed, we've seen a lot of Bent Auras deck being successful in this tournament.
Well,
three
actually,
of them top 8.
Yeah, we definitely saw 3 on top 8. The one that we actually watched play didn't end up winning, and the brackets worked out in a way where the 2 that were in the quarterfinals met in the semifinals, so we were guaranteed a Bent Auras or Bent Hexproof in the finals.
All right. So Brandon, let's see what he can do on this one. He has option of Smiter, Resurgence, and Flinteroff Board. Goes with the Smiter, passes it back to Dan.
Luxodon Smiter is pretty big, but, you know, it's bigger than all of the creatures in the Bent Hexproof deck, you know, face value. But
yeah, but
they get bonuses. They get buffs.
Yeah, they get a little bonuses every now and then.
Speaking of buffs, there's a unflinching courage and a ethereal armor
and a Simic Charm sitting in Dan's hand.
Whew, so there is a very efficient use of all of the mana for Dan Cecchetti. Geist of St. Trapped and a ethereal armor on it, and the follow-up, which is going to be
your favorite card?
Yeah, unflinching courage is going to make that a 4/5, a 6/6 hexproof first striking lifelink creature that has a 4/4 that kind of comes along with it for the ride.
Seems okay.
And I think he's going to have mana open to cast Simic Charm too, if he actually needs to.
So now, right now, Brandon's in the tank. He's looking at the Smiter, Flinteroff Board, the Voice of Resurgence, 2 Flinteroff Boards, and his Celestia Charm. You know, he's pretty scared of how this is going to turn soon.
Well, I mean, he doesn't really have a lot of ways to interact. I know I say that a lot, but Magic is all about interacting with either, you know, the cards in play, the cards in your opponent's hand, things like that. And right now, because of Hexproof, the only real way to interact with the Geist of St. Trapped is to block it. But it's going to get really big, and it's going to have First Strike, which is going to make it hard to interact with in that way.
So Brandon decides to go with the Luxodon Smiter. He had the option of playing 2 Flinteroff Boards, decided just to double up in the Smiters. Going to send in for 4, drop Dan down to 16. Draws his card for turn, Glacial Fortress for Dan, and he didn't need anything off the top of the deck this time around.
No, I mean, that land is nice because it's going to make sure that he can still cast his Simic Charm.
And, ooh.
And there we have it.
I'm sure if we could take a picture of Brandon's face right now, there's probably a fairly large frown going on.
Well, I mean, this is the beginning of, I don't want to say the end. It could be the beginning of the end, because I mean, the best that Brandon can probably muster right now is 3 Luxodon Smiters to jump in the way, and that's barring no other spells, no other enchantments from Dan Cecchetti.
Stomping Grounds drawn by Brandon. Yeah, there's. I can't think of the combination of cards he's looking for right now.
Well, right now, Brandon can 3-for-1 himself by double blocking with both Luxodon Smiters and using a Celestia Charm on the one that doesn't die to the first strike. Actually, no, that wouldn't be that would be a 2-for-1. But I mean, if that's what he wants to do, that's an option. And he does have the mana open, so that might be the play. Or maybe even triple blocking, just to be sure.
A Simic Charm around.
But Simic Charm is going to blow that.
Yeah, Simic Charm will
is going to blow that up. Well, if he triple blocks, then Simic Charm trades for the Celestia Charm. So So Brandon has had the foresight to triple block with 2 Loxodon Smiters and a Flint Hoof Boar. I mean, you might as well just throw all your creatures in the way if you're going to do that.
There's Toke. There's the 4/4 Angel. Now, in the tank right now. So, how about this Geist right now?
That Geist is causing problems. Not only is that Geist too big for anything to handle it individually in Brandon's deck, but it's putting the game out of reach. It's going to give, even if for some reason this creature dies, the life gain that Dan's going to have is going to give him more turns to draw more cards, to draw more hexproof creatures, to put more enchantments on.
So he has to order blockers right now. I'm assuming that Brandon's committed to the triple blocking now.
Well, this is going to end up, I guess, if you look at it in Brandon's favor, because the Geist of St. Trap problem will be resolved. He's going to take 4 damage, and he's at 8 right now. So he's going to take 4 damage. It's going to bring him down to 4. He's still going to be close to dead. There's an Invisible Stalker lurking in Dan's hand, which is death, because Invisible Stalker plus Simic Charm, if he wanted to save it, would have been 4 damage.
There's a Simic Charm.
So now Brandon needs to, well, I guess once the order of the blockers have been declared.
They're ordered like how they are right now. That's the order.
So he just needs to, can he even do that anymore? Because now it's a 9. It's 9, so it's going to kill 2 of those creatures, and there won't be enough left to deal 9.
And Brandon scoops it up.
Yeah, that actually, I think it was that ordering is what made that happen, making sure that to be able to kill the Flint Hoof Boar with the extra 3 damage from the Celestia Charm.
Despite the one that showed up on Brandon's side, it's actually Dan Cecchetti who's up 1 game in the finals here.
Yeah, Dan Cecchetti is actually up 1 game, so we'll get that resolved.
See, we don't know.
And I will repeat for Rusty Kubis's benefit, it's actually Dan Cecchetti that's up 1 game, but we'll get that resolved.
So we don't have the sideboard, we don't have their deck list in front of us anymore, so forget exactly what they can do, but I know that Dan Cecchetti, he has the fogs in his board.
Yeah, he's got the fogs, he's got the rays, he's got, I think he has a couple of counter spells. He's probably not worried about this matchup, to be honest, because it's just a creature deck. And, I mean, the best that these creature decks can do is some type of global removal spell, like a Bonfire or a Mizzium Mortars. But those spells have to happen, before the creature gets big enough to outclass them. And Mizzium Mortars, that costs 6 in order to overload it. And, earliest Brandon can do that. I guess earliest he could technically do it turn 3, but realistically, turn 4 to actually have a presence on the board after he does it. Turn 4, it's easy enough to have a 5 power, 5 toughness hexproof creature on the battlefield already, and then now Mizzium Mortars isn't an option anymore. I think the best approach to this deck is to get rid of the enchantments, because it's the only thing you can really target. You can't target the creatures, so you got to target the enchantments. Yeah,
and then Brandon, it looked like he's going to bring in those Oblivion Rings, a couple of copies of the Bonfires. Only ways he could really handle Dan's hexproof creatures. Bonfire.
I'm getting notes from Adrian Sullivan over here, but his handwriting is
says it's a very good matchup. Only Bonfire Mortars and O-Ring to worry about.
Oh, so kind of what we just said. Daniel thinks this is a great matchup, and the only cards that really interact are Bonfire, Oblivion Ring, and Mizzium Mortars. And Bonfire takes a while before it. I mean, Bonfire is probably the best option, and when I say option, I'm doing air quotes, even though I'm not doing air quotes. But if I were, you wouldn't be able to see them. So air quotes option, because it has to. The sequence of Brandon's deck has to be that it can generate enough mana and then top deck a Bonfire just as Dan has its hexproof creature and probably an enchantment or two on it in order for it to get the most value, Brandon Nelson only has one bonfire in his deck. So that's probably not going to happen. So, but he has a couple of Mizium Mortars. Mizium Mortars, he needs to get to 6 mana before Daniel can get his creature up to 5 toughness or more. And O-Ring is going to play the role of quote unquote, I do the air quotes again, 2 for 1, where you can use the Oblivion Ring to get rid of, say, 1 enchantment, and then make the creature, manageable if either by your bonfires, your Mizium Mortars, or now, you can block it with one of your creatures and trade.
Yeah. With all that said, really shows why Dan thinks it's an awesome matchup. He has a lot of things have to go right on Brandon's side of the table. While doing all that, he has to be applying pressure too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he can't just spend the entire game trying to stay alive against the bad hexproof decks because, the goal of the game isn't to live the longest. Although if you look at it in a way, it kind of is, because the goal of the game is to defeat your opponent, which meant you survived longer than that he or she did. But I mean, the plan has to be your opponent losing the game, and just dealing with the enchantments just Brandon dealing with the enchantments on Dan's creatures doesn't win him the game because they're still creatures.
Yeah, you only have to have his men on the board, turning sidewise in the midst of slowing him down, and hopefully he was able to race him before Dan could rebuild everything.
Yeah, and again. I mean, some of these men, they're good creatures. I mean, Geist of Saint Trapped, people have been playing Geist of Saint Trapped for a long time without putting the ethereal armor on it. That guy just deals damage in fast packets, and Voice of Resurgence, it's a 2/2. It ends up trading with something, becoming a 3/3 or a 4/4, and Invisible Stalker. That guy, he's not really that good of a guy. Just one, the 1/1 unblockable. Not really that impressive, but I'm not sure. We don't actually have the deck list in front of us, but one of these bad hexproof players wasn't playing as many Invisible Stalkers as most of the lists, and had Loxodon Smiters in the main deck, like a couple of my Loxodon Smiters, just to have quality creatures, just to up the creature quality, because the creature quality is kind of mediocre to low when you think about it. And we just got the deck list, and no, Daniel's playing Fencing Ace, so another not so quality creature, but it likes to hold the enchantments.
I believe I saw Daniel shuffling in a couple Advent Worms he brought in for this matchup, which we see in his hand right now. And his hand looks pretty slow. Spectral Flight, Advent of the Worm, and is that the Fence? Can't make out that last card in his hand.
Not sure. It could be a Fencing. He does have Fencing Ace in his deck. If it's a white card and it looks unfamiliar, it's probably a Fencing Ace. So I think that is Fencing Ace. It could also be a Ray of Revelation, but I don't know why he would bring that in. So we're gonna go with Fencing Ace. I was trying to take a look at Daniel's deck to figure out exactly what he would have taken out for Advent of the Worm. I can't imagine like any of these cards being unreasonable. Maybe it's a charm or two. Off the top of my head, I was going to say Fencing Ace, but if that's a Fencing Ace in his hand, I think, no, it's a Nearhearth Pilgrim. That's what that is.
Okay, so you brought those.
Yeah, those are actually, you know what, and that's actually something that's very good in the mirror match, because it gives you more ways to gain life, and that's probably another one of the cards that pushed him into the finals against his semifinals opponent, which was a mirror matchup.
Brandon does have a Mizium Mortars in his hand, 2 Avacyn Pilgrims, Sunpell Grove, and the Voice of Resurgence. So let's see.
I have to imagine that. Okay. I didn't. Okay, so I wasn't going to imagine that. That was not in my imagination, but I was thinking that that Mizium Mortars was going to
be key for the late game.
Yeah, it was going to be being key for the late game. A couple of Avacyn's Pilgrims in his hand. He has 5 mana collectively in his hand and on the board. So he could have used, a turn to play a Voice of Resurgence and then ramped up to 6 mana and been ready for what the first hexproof creature,
Now here's the Avacyn Pilgrim. I mean Avacyn.
Nearhearth.
Nearhearth Pilgrim. See Voice of Resurgence coming along with the Avacyn Pilgrim. Back to Dan. See, he gets an Invisible Stalker.
Not a bad one to pair up with Nearhearth Pilgrim.
It still seemed really ambitious of Brandon to get rid of that Avacyn Pilgrim with the Mizium Mortars.
Now, what? Oh, is that Advent of the Worm? That's
Yeah.
Maybe he just knew what was happening. He knew Advent of the Worm was happening. Now, speaking of ambitious, I think Dan is considering putting a Spectral Flight on his Nearhearth Pilgrim.
It's unclear what land does he want to play. Glacial Fortress.
He's gonna play something that makes blue. He's flipping. I think he should play the Invisible Stalker and just go all in on the Invisible Stalker, because Invisible Stalker plus the Nearhearth Pilgrim lifelink plus the Spectral Flight can push the game out of reach. That Mizium Mortars might worry me a little bit. The fact that he was so
used it so quickly.
Yeah, he just used it so quickly on an Avacyn's Pilgrim may make me think that he has a second. But I mean, we know that he doesn't. But Dan could actually.
The Dan has the Advent of Worm. He can just sit on, even if he thinks there's another Mizium Mortars on the way. So Hasty.
Flint Hoof Boar.
Flint Hoof Boar is going to come in here. Dan's just going to take the
Dan's just
5.
going to take it. This is how you play the lifelink game. It's like back in the day when you had a Exalted Angel and you had to decide between attacking with it or blocking a creature. It's almost always better to just attack with it, deal the 4 damage, gain the 4 life. You're probably neutralizing that same attack just from the 4 life gain, and you're killing your opponent.
All right, so Dan could be thinking that maybe I want to ambush Brandon's creatures next turn.
I don't know that that's why the Advent of the Worms are in the deck, but it could be a consideration right now.
Right now, that looks like seems fine to put the Spectral Flight right now with the Invisible Stalker. Take another 5.
Well, he would gain 3, which is pretty key. But he's just going to attack for 1. He's going to gain 1.
And Dan probably does that because he knows that,
we're just going to play it as a sorcery.
Doesn't want to give Voice any bonuses.
That
slams a token out there.
An interesting token. I think those were the tokens that were done at
Gen Con.
Yeah, Gen Con. There was a token booth, and people were able to go and get some tokens made of themselves.
Dan strong. So Dan should be up 1 life, I think.
Well, he should, unless he didn't pair those 2 creatures together.
I thought he.
But I thought I saw a pair in there, and they're pretty close to each other. They're they're practically. I mean, they're touching each other, so they have to be soulbound, right?
Yeah, that is how I base all the soulbound. Like you touch them.
Yep. Oh, they're touched
bound.
together. They're soul bonded.
All right, so Brandon will probably slam Spectral Flight onto the Invisible Stalker now.
So this is going to, so he did gain a life. He's up to 14. So this is going to gain him 3 more life. And we put him at 17.
And we'll play the other Invisible Stalker.
Now, right now, he's making the Mizium Mortars look better and better. Mizium Mortars, a bonfire off the top.
Nope, neither. Draws a stomping ground.
So he just plays a land and goes. He's holding back a Avacyn's Pilgrim.
And
See, this is interesting. He played the stopping ground tap. He's leaving a card back in his hand. He can't really be posturing that he has a Mizium Mortis. This is definitely saying that he doesn't have a Mizium Mortis, because who wouldn't take this opportunity just to do it right now?
Here's an Unflinching Courage. And nope, it doesn't look like it was a good one.
Well, it definitely wasn't a bonfire.
So Brandon will.
I mean, Brandon's facing a pair of 3/3 life-leaking, unblockable, hex-proof creatures.
Brandon might have considered just. He's in a tight spot here.
Well, there's ethereal armor in Dan's hand, and he
Is that
started
death?
doing some math. I didn't do the math, but
That's death.
I don't think it's death. 3, 4. It's only 9, so it's almost death.
All right, so Brandon needs a. I don't even think a miracle helps here.
Well, a miracle, technically a miracle would have done it, but there was no miracle. Congratulations to Dan Cecchetti. Cecchetti. The fifth combination of ways that the Italian C's could work. Cecchetti.
And congratulations, he will make the final slot on the U.S. team for the World
he is joining
Magic Cup.
Team USA. We will see him in Amsterdam. I'll see him in Amsterdam. I'll be